There was a time when I believed the world would move if I pushed hard enough. That belief feels distant now. Not dramatic, just distant. The storm I spoke about before, it has already passed. The arguments, the waiting, the long nights of rehearsing conversations that never happened. They belong to another version of me. I can remember them, but I no longer stand inside them. What remains is not victory, not defeat either, just a room that has gone quiet. In that quiet, I noticed something strange. The world did not collapse when I stopped trying to hold it together. The sky did not crack because I loosened my grip. People continued being who they were. Events unfolded without asking my permission. There is a softness in seeing that. I used to think peace would feel like triumph, like finally winning against chaos. Instead, it feels smaller, more ordinary, like setting down a heavy bag you didn't realize you were carrying. Nothing magical happened, no sudden revelation, only this. A recognition that some doors were never mine to open, and when that truth settled in, the air felt lighter, not because everything changed, but because I did. When everything quieted down, I found that the hardest thing was not accepting what had happened. It was looking at myself without flinching. I keep asking, slowly, almost cautiously, where did I go wrong? Not in the loud moments, not in the obvious mistakes. Those are easy to name. I mean the quieter places, the expectations I carried without admitting they were expectations. The silent contracts I wrote in my own mind and handed to other people without their consent. I expected understanding without always offering clarity. I expected loyalty without noticing the weight of my own demands. I expected outcomes to reward my effort, as if effort alone could bend reality. And when reality refused, I called it unfair. There is something humbling in recognizing that disappointment is often tangled with entitlement, not the arrogant kind, the subtle kind. The kind that whispers, after all I've done, this should have turned out differently. I see now how tightly I held on to certain images of how things should unfold, of who people should be, of who I believed myself to be. I mistook preference for principle. I confused desire with destiny. No one forced those expectations into my hands. I carried them willingly, sometimes proudly. It would be easier to explain everything away, to say timing was wrong, circumstances were unkind, other people failed me. Maybe some of that is true, but there were moments when I chose impatience, moments when pride spoke before reflection, moments when I listened more to my fear of losing than to the reality in front of me. I do not say this to punish myself, only to see clearly, because clarity, even when it stings, I feel steadier than self-deception, and perhaps the first honest step toward peace is admitting where my own hands tightened the knot. Somewhere along the way, I stopped looking for something dramatic to save me. No grand revelation, no sudden transformation, just a simple idea, repeated often enough that it began to settle into my bones. There are things that belong to me, and there are things that do not. It sounds almost too plain to matter, but when I began to live from that line, really live from it, something shifted. I no longer had to wrestle every outcome into place. I no longer had to treat every disagreement as a threat to my identity. If someone misunderstands me, that discomfort is real, but their judgment is not mine to command. If an opportunity disappears, the loss is real, but the timing was never mine to schedule. What remains is smaller but steadier. My effort, my honesty, the tone I choose when I respond. I used to think this way of seeing the world would make life feel narrow. Instead, it feels grounding, like placing both feet firmly on the earth rather than chasing the horizon. There is relief in knowing I am responsible for my character, not for the choreography of the universe. The world continues in its restless motion. People act from their own fears and hopes. Circumstances turn without warning, and I return quietly to the part that is mine, not as a rule, not as a doctrine, just as a point of balance I can lean on when everything else feels unsteady. There was a time when I believed every question deserved an answer. Every silence had to be interpreted. Every ending had to make sense. Every loss needed a reason that could be neatly folded and placed on a shelf. I don't live like that anymore. Some things happen without explanation. Some conversations ended mid-sentence and never resumed. Some doors closed without the courtesy of a final word. For a while, I chased those missing pieces. I replayed moments, searching for clues I might have overlooked. I dissected tone, timing, expression, as if somewhere inside the details there was a hidden key. But not every lock is meant to be opened. There is a quiet maturity in admitting that understanding is not always required for acceptance. I may never know why someone changed. I may never fully grasp why a certain path dissolved just as it seemed certain, and strangely, I no longer feel the same urgency to know. The unanswered questions are still there. They hover at the edge of thought, but they no longer demand resolution. I can let them exist, not solved, not justified, just present. And in allowing that space, in loosening my grip on the need for clarity, I feel lighter, not because everything is clear, but because I am no longer insisting that it must be. There is no final lesson waiting at the end of this reflection, no polished conclusion, no promise that everything will align tomorrow. The night remains as it is. Quiet, imperfect, unfinished. I sit with that. Life does not tie itself into clean endings. It continues, uneven and unscripted. Some questions soften with time. Others remain, like distant stars, visible but out of reach. And maybe that is enough. I no longer feel the need to resolve every thread before I rest. I no longer measure peace by how much I have fixed. Sometimes peace is simply the absence of struggle. If you are in that place, where things feel unresolved, where clarity has not arrived, I will not tell you it will all make sense. I will only say this softly. Stillness is not emptiness. It is space, and sometimes space is all we are given.